Big Squatchy, what's going on? Just getting things rolling. Hopefully the sound and picture are good. Getting the audio, making sure it's good. Hey Jay, what's happening? Oh, good. What's going on, everyone? Welcome to Airbrush Down Dirty Tricks. On this Thursday, we are doing something different, so I'm actually standing and not sitting. Because this whole new layout is going to be a different setup for me. And hopefully it works great. But adjusting the cameras, messing with it, getting it running. It's going to be a little harder for me to see text, but we will make it happen once I get closer to the surface, because now I'm further away from my screens. But we're going to make it happen. Let's see who we got on tonight. Well, you got Big Squatchy, we got London Pen, Jonathan Collins already posted. That's awesome that you got a panel ready to go. Because I'm gonna start this with just a bunch of practice tape outs and some different options and different ways to move the tape, different things like that. So I think that'll be very helpful. I am recording this, so hopefully I'll be able to cut this up into some smaller videos. Ron Bassey, what's going on? And let's see who we got in here tonight. So we got 10 people starting out. Starting a little slow tonight. That's all right. Let me show you what I got for a setup here. So I got my bench all set up. We have our, it's a little squeaky. I should probably maybe put a little grease on here. So I'll start off with the first thing, and that is this little bugger here. This is the VsionAir. This is their skateboard mount. Which you could mount other things to it. I've got a couple ways to bolt, like the gas tanks to it, backpack shelves. There's all sorts of stuff you can do with it. They have a race car, an RC car version of this as well. It's got a wider. It's got these wider with different adjusters on it for RC cars. It's a great stand because I can rotate it, I can pitch it, I can do everything. Great for gas tanks. They actually have a gas tank one on a rotisserie as well. There is a links in the description for these. So what I got tonight, I got two cameras set up. I got a top down, which is like this. So when I do it like this, that's going to be good for you seeing it long ways. But you can see it's a very versatile stand. It's pretty strong. It's very stable to work off of. And I got this little turn cam. You can't really see it down here. I'm going to switch cameras out. You can see down here. I can adjust this and tighten it, and then I can also adjust here, and I can rotate it, and I have a lock under here if I want to lock it into a different position. I can lock it. All sorts of cool things to do. So let's see what else we got going on. Sorry, I gotta put a new iPad in here, so I can now see the iPad post a little, Facebook post a little easier. And yeah, cool. So what do we got in here tonight? All right, let's talk about some different layouts. I got a few things back here I've done. This was done on the Createx page. So this shows a quick tape out that I did, and then just laying a pattern, which we're going to probably use some of my patterns in here. This is an older skull one. Me and Rhino did this at the Rendezvous a long time ago, and we'll go over this. And this was a very fine pearl flake, so not very low-ridery, like flashy, but you know, multiple layers of tape outs and lace work and some fan work and patterns. So this is a mix of airbrush, skull, and that pattern work, and how to do that. So we'll talk about that tonight. And this was the one I did for SEMA. So guys, remember this has a lot of flake. This is actually the same flake that's on here on this board. So I might actually do this board in similar colors of the blues, because I can kind of reference back to this quite a bit, and I think it'll be a cool way to go over it, because not everything is flaked. I put some opaques in here, and there's some additional work. I'm going to be doing this in the future, I think. So, but I'm probably going to work this type of layout, something similar to this, or maybe not. I haven't really decided the layout, but it's going to be on that. When I do these layouts, I don't really have a huge plan. Robert, what's going on? I tend not to over-sketch these. I tend to let the tape lay where it lays and happens when it happens. That's how I'm feeling it. If a client references a certain style of curve, like this style versus this or that, or I'll definitely work within that range. But I typically just sit down and start taping. That's kind of what I typically do. So before I get into taping out a LowRider design, let's talk about tape. Tape I'm using tonight. This is FBS. Okay, I've been an automotive custom painter full-time for 23 years. 24 years now, actually, as of next week. But I've been airbrushing and painting and experimenting and messing with tape since 1989, so we're going on 35 years coming up on the 18th. So I messed with lots of tape. I started with original 3Ms. I always had issues with 3M. It's a great tape, but I had issues with it either moving or leaving glue or things like that and different things. And I used a bunch of different ones, and I've worked with FBS now the majority of the latter part of my career, because FBS actually gives a crap, in my opinion, about how the tape works for painters and custom painters, not how it works at Home Depot, not how it works in production shops. They really look at how it works for custom painters, because now it's owned by a custom painter, and when it was before it was owned by a custom painter, which it is now, the original owner really listened to custom painters and really helped make the tape work. So we don't get the glue left behind. We get very little movement at all, if any, and I'll talk about that. And what they've done here, and a lot of people get confused with FBS, is Jonathan, I'll answer that in 2 questions. What FBS did is the tapes are different colors because they're different rigidities. So if you look at the scale, that scale of rigidity and thickness is not the width of the tape, it's the thickness of the tape. So the medium orange is a thicker tape, so it's better for long straights and mild curves and to hold a long curve. And then you go to green, which would be softer, and then you go to medium soft, which is blue, which is my favorite, and then extra soft, which is red, which that stuff can be like bubble gum if you're not really careful, especially if it's hot. And then you have your production tapes here, you have micro tapes, you have a bunch of other stuff. We'll go over some of that. This is not really FBS commercial. They're not paying me to say this. They do supply me with tape for the channel and some projects now and again. And they've worked with me for years on tape development, and that's how we came up with the gold mask and the plotter mask and things like that. So that's how that stuff came about, because they actually cared and listened. Okay, a couple questions. Where do I get my panels from? So these panels, I get them from a signed supplier. These are polymetal panels. So they're aluminum with PVC core or a plastic core. They're called Durabond, Alumacore. There's all sorts of names for it. Basically polymetal, if you call a local sign supplier, and everyone's got a sign supplier somewhere in their state, of multiple. If there's a sign shop that makes signs, you bet your butt within an hour or two there's a signed supplier that they get their vinyl from, that they get everything from. If you don't, I can tell you there's a company called Fellers, FELLERS.com. They're a vinyl supplier and metal supplier and sign supplier that's national. And they have a website, they have pickup locations everywhere in the country. So I buy these in 4x8 sheets, and then they cut them down. I usually cut them down to this 12x18 size. I have the whole sheet cut to these, so I get about like 10 or 15 of them. 10 of them. And then the 12x18s here, you get about 21 of those out of a sheet. And the nice thing about those is, if you take a razor blade and score them twice, they snap like glass. So you can make them any size. Super easy. This speed tank is the holy grail of speed tanks. So sorry, you can't get these anymore. I know Dave had a few of them left. I have a stack of, I think I have a half a dozen of them that I'm going to do up. So I either paint these to keep for display, or these are done for sale. And they're not cheap because you can't get these all steel ones anymore. There are places that make plastic ones that are okay. I think Inspire Paints makes the plastic ones you can get that are similar shape. But to get these metal ones anymore, they're gone. And they're not going to be made anytime soon, as far as I know. So, let's see. Gary Shees, what's happening? I've been painting die-cast carvings, really want to expand into pattern painting. Oh, cool. Dude, I love pattern painting. I got into it pretty late in my career, and but I've learned some great techniques over time. So I want to kind of share some of those. So I'm going to use the red just because it shows up really good on camera here, and it's super soft. So I'm going to get a red. Do I have a red 1/8 inch here? That's a quarter. Actually, what I want to show you is that rigidity. So the nice thing about, let's go from the hardest. I'm going to lock this in. Let's go here. Let's see if we like this. I'm going to consider this puppy wrapped up. So you can kind of see both happening at once. Alright. Adam, what's going on? Welcome back. Pano Jammers does not carry these. Nobody carries these. Pano Jammers never made these. They carry all the flat plates, all the flat panels. They're awesome. I'll go over the skateboard in a sec. But yeah, these, I wish these were a guy Troll's custom tank blanks. He made them years ago, and he owns the die, and they are awesome. The problem is, we're all cheap as an art form, so we all bitch about how much things cost, and then what happens is he doesn't have the money to make them anymore because prior to these he used to have to make them in batches of 500 and then inventory them and wait for our cheap asses to buy them and complain that they were $40 and $50 a piece, even though they're all steel, and then powder coated. And he would have to warehouse those, and now his minimum requirement when he does a run is 5,000. So he's just not going to sit in that much inventory, and it's just not going to happen. That's the last I knew. So, yeah. Unfortunately, that's just where these ended up. But they are awesome, and I hoard the ones I have. So if I ever do let one of these go, yeah, it's not going to be cheap, and it's going to be really cool artwork. The skate deck, this is a standard skate deck I got from Coast Airbrush. You can get skate decks, these wood decks, for like $25, $30 all day long from everywhere. Mike, understand what's happening. So what we did is I brought this to Daryl Sargent, who's a friend of mine I paint with. We do a lot of bikes together. So he does a lot of flake work. So I sent him a batch of stuff, actually including this panel. So this is what the flake looks like underneath, because I've already sanded this and scuffed this from earlier. So it's this flake with a touch of the same splinter rainbow flake that's in this. So see how this one rings out? Yeah, this stuff's really killer. So Daryl did all these for me. And basically he blocked this down, sanded it, primed it, blocked it, and then flaked it. And then cleared it with a lot of clear. So this is super thick. There's a lot already into this. And that's what's happening here. Some awesome tape. Still have some from the course in Quebec. That's awesome. So like Jason took my course a long time ago in Quebec, and he's still got it. The tape's still in good shape. Still from Dollar Tree, favorite place. Yeah, you can get cheap panels. Look, these come down to, you pay 90 bucks for a sheet and you get 22 of these. And they're already white on one side, black on the other, base coated or E-coated. So it's 100 bucks, you get 22 of them. Yeah, you're less than $5 a piece for a prepped and primed. You don't have to scuff it, you don't have to prime it, you don't have to paint it, you don't have to do anything. They're already white and black. These are still the cheapest way to go for a good quality panel. And the plastic cores make it nice and easy to ship. Alright, let's talk about tape and rigidity. So these are the two softest. These are 1/4 inch. 1/4 inch typically doesn't bend much. So if I try to take a piece of 1/4 like this and try to bend it tight, I gotta really I'm yanking this to stretch it around. And yeah, I can get it to do it. But I stretch this so much, this loop is gonna fail, or it's gonna lift, or it's gonna pull, because this tape is designed for more straights. Now, if I want to use a 1/4, and I wouldn't really use a 1/4 for that much, for that width of a flame, but if I had to, I was showing you the red is so soft that it just, oops. Now talk about what I'm doing here. This stuff just glides into a turn, and it won't ever move. All right, it's super easy. I'll talk about more of it and why to do each one. But just know when I'm doing longer straight graphics, I would most likely use the orange. So if I'm doing stuff like this that maybe has a slight turn, I want to make a long turn, I'm going to use this, because this is going to always keep me a really nice straight taper, and it doesn't overstretch, and I can kind of guide it really easy, and it's very predictable. Okay, see how fast I just laid those two? Very predictable and easy to use. And so if I was doing something simple like this, and I was coming down straight, whenever you're doing long straights, let's talk a couple basics here. For long straights, a pinstripe tape out with that slight curve, what you're going to do is you keep it taut. See how it just springs straight? That's about your pull. That's all you want to do, is just pull it so it goes blink. It almost makes that doing sound, like cartoon noise. Okay? And you just get it there, and you put your thumb or guide finger, whatever it's going to be, whatever your preference is, right where the tape is touching. And it's lifted off from there. So that's exaggerated. That's kind of where I'm touching. I keep it low, and then I keep it taut, and that slight tightness, but I'm not stretching it. I'm not pulling it. It's just there's no slack in it. And I guide the tape, and I can kind of position here and here if I need to keep it straighter. And I watch the tape and I guide, and then I decide where I want to turn. And remember, wherever you turn, you got to keep pressure on the turn, and you pull maybe a little harder, and then you start moving. You kind of can't see my arm off hand. I'm going to come up a little bit so you can see my hand here. I usually go pretty far out. What you're going to do is you're going to start moving left and right, whichever way your direction is going to go. So I'm going to move this hand over to my right, and I'm going to be pushing down and guiding at the same time. So I'm pushing and pulling at the same time, almost equal force, and you get that nice curve. Okay? If I was to do that again, and say I want to make a cool design, I can do it straight like that, and I want to cut it here, I'm going to show you a little trick. well, not really a trick, but this is the technique on how we do points. I try to minimize the amount of time a blade cuts. And when I do graphics of this, I typically use a straight edge blade as opposed to an X-Acto style blade. So see how this piece of tape, let's see if I can zoom in a little more. This piece of tape right here, the second one I did, is on top. Okay? I use that as my guide tape. So whenever I do this, the blade's just touching and very light pressure. I just slide down like this, one pull, and I'm just cutting through the tape. Then I pull this right up, right to the edge. Now, what a lot of guys do, and I used to do the same thing, I used to try to follow this line and cut my edge. And then essentially I have two cuts. So what I do, instead, lay your blade on top. Let's get nice and zoomed in here. Just lay your blade on top like this, right in the middle, and then pull your tape right up to the blade. Like that. Now I only had one cut this way, and this one is halfway on top, letting this tape with the curve in it create its own edge. Super simple, super clean. Okay, let's show you that again. I'll do the same thing. I'll use a different color tape, different size, and you can see kind of how to lay out everything. Lauren, that's what it is. Don't stretch the tape. You don't need to like overstretch it. Some people overstretch it. You are stretching it to a degree, but. So let's do another design. I'm going to do the same type of design, but I'm going to come up into it, okay, with a different size. So I'm going to take this design, piece of tape, same thing. I got it here. I'm going to come here. I'm just, see how it's springing? You get that little springing. And I'm kind of looking at the edge. If I wanted to get a precise measurement here, like 3/4 of an inch or half, I could put a piece of 1/2 inch tape in there. I could do markings. I'm not going to talk about that with like rulers or a ruler. I don't need to, for the most part, for this stuff. It's pretty simple. So I'm going to come down like this, do the same thing. I'm going to follow along the same line, like that. That same kind of push-pull. And I'm not going to go all the way in because I'm going to show you why. I'm just going to go into here like that. Make sure it's down. And same thing. I don't want this piece of tape. Instead of cutting like this, I'm just going to put my blade down like this and pull the tape right into it. Again, I'm using that one that was on top, that second one, as my guide to just go one cut down. And then this one, I'm pulling the tape. I should have left a little bit more length. But see, it's just down, I'm pulling it right into it, and I'm getting a nice, clean edge. So you get the really nice clean edge there. Now, what a lot of people worry about, and I used to too, and I'm going to go over this a few times, but I did stretch a little bit, but this is really not going to move it so simple. But if it did want to move a little bit, because vinyl tape does have a memory to it, all right? And I learned this trick, and I've been painting for years and taping for years and never saw it. I was at SEMA next to a couple painters, and I watched some guys do it, and I was wondering what the hell they were doing. And this is one of the best tricks I learned about taping, is a torch lighter. So tape has memory. If you're doing really big pulls and you're worried about things moving, like if it's really hot and humid, which it really is in here, and you're going to be taping for over a day or two, and you don't want this to move, or you want to lock it down, what some guys do with tape, if they worry about it, and I know you've seen guys do it, and I still can do this once in a while if it's going to be a long time, they'll do this. At the end of the day, they're going to come back the next day just so their points don't move. And it helps. It does help a lot. And sometimes I still do it. But one of the best things I learned was this. If you just take these torch lighters and go click, click, that little torch, you push it down, it does two things. It closes the gap, if there is any, from tape bleeding through, because it merges it. And it also deletes the memory out of the vinyl, so the tape doesn't want to move. So even on like a tight corner like this, sometimes I've done it, where I've done these like really big, like gnarly pushes. What I'll do is I'll try to do 2 of them and see if anything, what the difference is. So these are about pulled the same. Okay. A little click. And let's see if this one moves and that one doesn't while we're talking. It's a huge, huge advantage, especially when you're doing like long points. Like I'm going to do a set of long points here. I'm just going to take these 2 and talk about this cutting method. Say when you're doing points of a flame like this. I'm going to do it in the red so you can see. I think the red will be a little better to see. I would definitely love some input from you guys on things you'd like to see, things you haven't seen, because I do want to make some videos in the future that I'll probably edit. But let's take this for example. I'm going to do a long curve and cut. So what I'm going to do now is I want this hook to be a cut. So I'm following my second one on the inside edge. And I can see through the tape, and I'm making this cut. I'm doing that. Nice and easy. I just pull it away. Then I'm taking this, and I'm going to draw across the tape so I'm not having to cut. And I just pull that blade into that, and you get a really nice, slick point. And if you look, you can see this tape is just overlapping that one perfectly. And if you're worried, like I said, just take this, click it once to heat it, and I push it down. And if you look really close, let's see if I can get that in. Let's see if I can focus that. If you look really close, you can see by heating it up, it closed that edge up. So now if I paint inside here, no tape bleed will get in. But if you look at this guy, this is the one I heated up, this one I didn't. If you look really close, what's happening? Right here, it's starting to pucker. It's starting to pucker and lift up right there, which means it's eventually going to move back. So even vinyl overstretched, even the FBS, if you overdo it, will. If I didn't want that to happen, and I didn't want to heat it, I would just drop down to a 16th inch tape versus the 1/8. Or I would drop from the blue to the red. But that's just some basic quick tapes. I'm going to take these off. I'm going to do something simple again. Yeah, it's been a minute, honey. Thanks for popping in. Thank you, everyone. I got 54 in here tonight. Thank you all. We got a lot of Down and Dirty Tricksters in here, which are my members. Big shout out to all you guys. Thank you very much. London Penn, Scott Voss, Gary Hill, Scotty Boy, Week 22, Stephen Belinda. I need to be reading faster. All of you guys, thank you for all the support. We're at 59 people, and for those who are new, you get 25% everything at McKayFineArt.com through the end of June. So that's if you join up, and then you go to McKay Fine Art. All my digital downloads, all my patterns, they are all 25% off for members only. Members only, that's it. So if you want to know how to join, click that link up in the top corner. Use your phone. That'll let you join the party, and you will get your discount code and go from there. So I want to thank everyone for that. All right. So let's talk about tape again, because that's what we're going to talk about all night. It's a little hot in here. I might have to turn my AC a little bit more. Give me 2 seconds, sorry guys. We're definitely fighting the heat up here in the studio tonight. Honey, you are the best. Thank you, thank you, thank you for your super chat. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So again, other reason I use FBS tape, their rolls, when you look at the roll-to-roll prices, they're almost the same as 3M. And I think the same price. These rolls have a lot more on them. So these rolls have 60 yards of tape. I think and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, and I don't know if I'm being right, I think they're 30 to 40 yards on the 3M. I do not believe they are 60 yards. The other thing, these come in 16th, 1/8, quarter, half in vinyls. They are the only ones that I've seen that come in a true 16th inch. So that is really cool. And then when you get down to the micro tapes, they actually have a micro tape. And then you get into your production tapes. And these are the production tapes. These are your standard production. You know, this is the higher performance tape, the yellow, and this is their standard production body shop tape. AJ, more pattern work. Yeah, tonight is the goal of this one. We will lay out a pattern. Will be the full job on this. So, aside from patterns, and we are going to get into that very shortly. Lots of stuff you can do with tape, obviously. Just once you get your start. You know, everyone, we can do all the nice, like, you know, you've seen border stripes. We are doing two. You know, and you're going to do what I just said. We're going to just cut once. And then pull the second one right into it. Done like that. If you're going to do another one, if you want to do specific spacing, you can do this. So this is 1/8. Now I want to take, I usually use different colors for this. If you want to do your gaps a certain way. 1/8. Put this right next to it. Just move it so you can see. Keep it really tight right to it. So if you want to have perfect 16th gaps, say you're doing pinstriping on an old car, and you didn't order the finesse tape, which is already pre-masked like this, you can do your own. Cut. Cut. Now let's say I'm going to go quarter. But if I'm only painting inside the line, or painting inside and around, I can have my so if I was to spray this now, I would have an 1/8 inch pinstripe with a 16th inch gap and then a 1/4 inch pinstripe if I sprayed around it. Really, really simple. Okay. So that's using the tape to get your measurements. So now if I wanted a 3/4, I do the same thing. I could take this, and now I could, let's say I want to kind of change the graphic up. Go back to 1/8 inch. If I come here, and this is where I want to start my turn right at the end of the tape. Now I pull this out. I know my gap here is going to be a nice 3/4 inch gap. So that's using tape as your measuring device. Which I did a lot of that when I did this. Okay, so if you look at this piece here, all the silver you're seeing is the width of the tape. So all of these lines here is this. It's this coming down, and I'm keeping it straight to here. And I'm doing a slight bend. Let me use the red so you can see. Do I have red quarter? Let me see. Oh yeah, I need red 1/8. Let me show you again. Alright, so if I want to redo that line, so I'll show you when I laid this out. What I did is I'm going to follow this one down. So I keep it tight. Right to about here. This is where I start my turn. I'm keeping tension, tension, tension. I'm pulling it out. And I'm actually going way past where I'm going to stop, and I just pull it. I do this next line here. I know I'm keeping my gap. You can put a piece of tape there if you need it. And the same thing. I'm doing that. Now what I'm doing, I'm going to take a piece of straight, and I'm just going to go like this. Yeah, we'll do this one too while I'm here. Turn. Just straight and tight. And this is kind of how I work, and I design on the go. And then I take my tape, I pull the blades into it. And I'm just going to snap that right in. And I just start pulling and taping around. And then I leave this covered. And I start painting everything. And then when I pull all my tape edges, they're eventually going to stay silver because it's silver underneath. And this inside design is the same thing. I just trace it. Going on the inside here. A little tension and bend. Straight. Pull that right in. Pull that. And pull that. Now that stays. And then we keep repeating, repeating, repeating. I know, again, I make it sound simple and easy. And it relatively is. But it takes practice. Okay? It definitely takes practice. I'm trying to say how I need to move this. There we go. To get that layout and figure out how that design works for you. But we're going to talk about that more and more as we go through. I'll just leave that to the side. Now the other thing about tape, we've all seen it, we all wanted to do it or have done it. Oh, let me read. Let's see, I think I might still have my members only jacket. Let's talk about hot rod flames. Old school flames, hot rod flames. I still love doing them to this day. It's like skulls. They never really truly go out of fashion. They're a blast to do. zoom out here. Alright. So, we're going to definitely do a LowRider pattern once I start. And I'm going to stay with the shape of that, and I'm going to get into that. But what if we didn't? What if we wanted to do flames? Someone says, hey man, I want old school hot rod flames. Let's talk about old school hot rod flames. Cheers, everyone. Old school flames. Back in the day, a lot of it looked like this. And a lot of guys still kind of have this look or have trouble. These are what we used to call lobster claw flames, because they look like lobster claws. They look like lobster claws because they're fat, they're skinny, they don't kind of have much flow, they're really thick, and they're stubby. They don't really have flow. Okay, so don't get me wrong, lobster claws can be done right, and they can look cool in the right vintage vehicle, and I'm not slamming them, but they can look very bad. Okay. And then we'll call spaghetti flames. These I've also seen a lot of back in the day. I'm over exaggerating some of the badness of these, but it's just for effect. And it's funny because over the years, these are a lot of the mistakes people make on real fire too. We talked about the do's and don'ts of real fire. You know, they'll do these kind of long, really thin, but they kind of follow each other. Like everything just follows each other. Okay? It's not what you want in flames. You want a nice kind of bounce effect. You want them to kind of almost think of it like magnetic attraction. They bounce away from each other, they come back towards you. They have a nice flow to them. So my ideal basic flame, I'll call this a single lick flame, is basically you want to start with a teardrop, okay? So you keep it tight here. And this is where you got to kind of switch hands. This takes a little bit of practice. You keep it tight, okay? And you pull, and as you're pulling, you slide to one side. I'm moving my hand. I'm kind of like a pendulum going back and forth. I'm going swinging out one way, and then right about here, I want to start swinging back. And right here, I got to switch hands because I can't invert myself. So watch. I'm going to go hand to hand, and I'm going to guide, and I'm going to move the tape around. I'm going to come back towards the other side, and I'm going to bounce away from it. Okay? I'm following like this, coming around, and I'm coming back in, and I'm making basically a drip or a teardrop. Okay? That teardrop kind of sets up the flame. And I have a little lean to the teardrop. I could do, let me finish this one, I'll show you different ways to do that, because some guys are very symmetrical with their teardrops, some are very off-centered, and it changes the look of the flames, and it really can play with your style. And you can also reposition, like I want this one to kind of swing out a little more. Okay? Just like that, I want to swing out. Now, what I always do in my flames, if I'm cutting, I crisscross, then I kind of pull, and that's where I can see the tip of the flame. See how I'm just seeing the point out? And from that point, I'm going to gradually grow it. I'm following it. And as I go further down, I'm growing the width. So it's getting wider. I'm getting wider, getting wider. I'm following what's there. And then right about here, if I don't want to follow around it, I want to kind of hourglass shape it and come around to the next flame. I'm coming down here like this, and right about here, this nice curvature, hourglass curve, female figure curve, whatever you want to think of it as. right about here is when I start coming back around again for the next one. Make the next swing. Come back towards your flame. Come back towards your flame before you hit it, bounce back away. Okay? And then come back up like this. Same thing. Now I'm going to go to the other side. You can go whichever way you want depending on your layout. I crisscross, especially if I'm going to be cutting these. I grow as I grow as I grow as I grow. Okay, see how that's thicker than here, but it's a nice even transition. It slowly grows. But if you did this, doesn't look as good, right? It's a nice pull. What a lot of guys make the mistake of, and they have trouble pulling and turning corners, and I'm going to talk about this, is right about here they start going slack. And when they start going slack, they start having trouble keeping it straight and smooth. So I'm going to keep it tight, just that boing, that little sproing noise. And then I'm going to get bigger, bigger, bigger as I go here. Let it grow a little bit. And I can decide where I'm going to make the transition. I'm going to lean right down like a turn to my left. I'm going to come down to here like this and do a big old loop down here. You know, I want to tighten it up a little bit. I'm going to come right inside. You can get a few pulls at it before you have to relay fresh tape. So you get that nice thick to thin, that pull. I tend to have a slight lean to mine. Some guys are very symmetrical left and right. That's where you develop your own style and look at it. But again, what I want is a point. I want to slowly grow. Oops, my tape's messed up. I want to slowly grow as I come down the flame lick. And now I'm going to come up to this side. I'm just going to come right down and hook off. And have that nice flow there. Same thing. I'm going to come off this one. Now I could turn early on this one. If I can get on both sides of it, I could just kind of pivot my body and not have to switch hands until I get to here. I can do that long hook. It takes a lot of practice. It's really rewarding once you kind of get it. I can really get lost in taping flames. So this is long, so I'm going to get really, but again, I'm following those rules. It's going thin to thick. I'm not breaking that, and I'm giving that nice hourglass feel. And I'm going to come down like that. Switch it over, you can see that from up there. And then if you were painting these flames inside one color, you can leave all this where it is and just cover tape it. This is not a flame video fully, so we're not going to go into all of it, but yeah, but if you weren't and you wanted these, say you were going to leave these silver, you're going to paint one color on this side, one color inside, and you wanted these flames to be silver pinstriped, that's when you'd follow that same rule and do the cut. Oops, that was a bad one. That was a bad example. I pulled a little too hard. Let me cut this one. And then I'll leave this one up. And you'll get a nice point if you're going to keep doing that style. See how I get a nice point there? I cut it inside. And then I pull the tape right up into it. right up into it. You get nice, clean flames. But if you're painting inside of it, you can just leave it like this. Okay. The one style flame that some people do really well at is what you just call them rabbit ears. Or I've referred to them when other people have called rabbit ears. I know Steve Van Diemen, Craig Fraser, they could get away with them. I could never get away with these looking that great. But they would go, it's usually don't do this, but they would go wide, skinny, wide again, and back out. And do this kind of rabbit ear style. Or like ribbon style flame. I never liked the way it looked when I did it, but for some reason when they pull it off, so it doesn't work as good for me. I'm just showing to you as an option. They would do this style, which could be funky and cool. But those are the rabbit ears. Those are fun. But I never liked the look of it. Everyone's pretty quiet tonight. Are we bored or having a good time? Because no comments means I think if everyone's bored, or everyone could just be like really engaged. So let me know. Oops. 3/4 cam. There we go. I used to do a ton of tribal flames. So tribal flames is a good thing. Let's talk about that. So a tribal flame, there's a few ways to do them. How I first started doing them is I would do a normal flame job for the most. I still start that teardrop, and then a lot of times what I would do like a hook back like this. And cut it out and have this style. This is like a fishhook style or devil tail style. Yeah, we would do that. Or I would tape out the normal flame job. Say a normal flame. I'll just tape out one big one here. So you'd have the flame, and then I would say, okay, let's make it tribal. And I would add a hook like this to it. You know, and do that double hook. Sometimes I would come in here. And then I would do that style. You know, kind of hook back in. You know what I mean? And that would give you that kind of tribal look of a flame. And then there was obviously tribal graphics. Talk about some tribal graphics really quick. Tribal graphics, a lot of times we would go back in and do these long, like, hooks. Let's see, kind of do all, you know, basically this is really rough. Oops. Messed that one up, sorry kids. Try not to cut the skate deck too much. So yeah, we would go in and then, you know, kind of fix all these hooks. And kind of lay out some weird tribal design and double backs and hooks and all stuff like that. No, unfortunately, tribals lasted a lot longer than that. Don't know what tribe they were from, though. They were really big around the same time barbed wire tattoos were big. A lot of times tattooing, graphics, and automotive go in the same genre. You start seeing it on, like... So for a while there you had your tribal motorcycle with the cross with all the gritty patterns, and then that was on your bike, it was tattooed, it was on your Affliction shirts. There was a lot of it. Another cool, I always liked this flame, and this was one I learned from watching, I think when I took Craig Frasier's class back in 2000. When I went full time, it was like a groovy kind of like funky flame. So same rule, right? But doing a big curve, and then I'm coming down, almost going straight this way. Then I'm coming back like this. I'm doing that same double back. Okay. And same rule. I'm growing it as I come back. Really a cool, funky flame. But again, it's just bending tape. See what I mean? That's a cool, funky flame. There's so many ways you can do with it. Obviously, you can do scallop designs, like old school scallop, which are just like the straight spikes, which came one way. Like this, tape again, big long spikes, all sorts of things like that. Well, we can talk about some more of that. But let's talk about what we really came here tonight for, and that is a full layout. Come on. There we go. I'm going to try to do it like that for this angle. Whoa! 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 Trying to get my camera in position. This is a whole new way of shooting with my rig. Looks cringy. Yeah, it could look a little cringy. You know, the tribal started getting so complicated, we basically all went into plotting really complex things. But the one thing I never got into is plotting old school flames. It never really works well. It always looks very static and bleh, boring. Get a little wax and grease remover. Clean this off. And let's talk about prep, and then when we do these LowRider. Yep, exactly. So, Jonathan, exactly. What I'm going to do tonight is I'm going to lay this out. I'm going to show you kind of a few secrets what I do for layout. And there's another couple reasons I like different color tapes or different sizes. Sometimes I designate by size or color on which one goes first, which one goes second. We won't be painting tonight. We'll be painting sometime next week, if not next Thursday or before. Probably next Thursday. But let's talk about how we get here first. Because before you do anything, your silver flake or whatever you have should be cleared and sanded and protected, because you can't sand on top of metal flake and you can't sand on top of silver or metallics or pearls. You got to have clear. Okay, you got to have clear down, and when you have clear down, so you got to have your clear down. That way the silver's protected, all your pearls are protected, your flake's protected. Because if you sand on top of flake, you're going to scratch the metallic. You're going to scratch the actual metallic flake, and it'll never go away. So whenever you use a pearl or metallic, you have to lay down clear, at least an intercoat clear. I always lay down a full 2K clear, 2-3 coats, let that sit, and then we sand that with 600 grit, and then a gray or red Scotch-Brite. I usually hit red lightly to like get in things, and then I go over the whole thing with a gray. Sometimes the red can be a little too aggressive. If you're not sure how thick you clear, someone else did it, you can get away with 800 and then a Scotch-Brite. I never go over 800. Once you start getting to 1,000, you start risking adhesion loss or anything like that. I really don't recommend it. I've seen a lot of guys with candies and things like that. They'll do 1,000, 1,200. They'll peel. They'll get delaminations because it's just not enough bite. So I typically use 600 as a rule. When I do big rigs, if you're in a big rig or something that has a really high solids clear, we've run into this on like Kenworth trucks and things like that, because they're clear with Emerald. Emerald is so strong, it's such a high solids. I actually cut that stuff with 400 grit first, because I've sometimes learned that 600 sometimes isn't even enough for a good bite on Emerald. So I typically rule 600. So what you want to do is you want to take your panel, your nice shiny panel here, and you got to go over it. And I usually wet sand with 600, get everything down. If it's really thick and lumpy, you can do 400 and then 6 if you're worried. So I go the whole thing with 400 grit, get it all done, and then I go over it with a gray Scotch-Brite, a red Scotch-Brite, make sure there's no shiny spots. Okay, so even if you look up here, see there's some heavy texture up here and some heavy texture here. See how it's still a little shiny? That's a delamination waiting to happen. Okay. Oh, ball of motion stripes and all that stuff. Yeah. All like the crazy. Yeah. Unfortunately, I remember them. Kind of a 3D effect. So what I want to do is I'm going to make sure I get into all these nooks. Make sure there's no shine. Because if it's shiny, you have a very high risk of delamination. Always get your edges. Like what's happening. So Jonathan's, that's a great question where I will talk about how the order, and so I usually work my big shapes first and then into my small. Then I kind of determine my colors. Sometimes I actually note and write notes on the piece itself of what's going what, and then which one's going to pull first and which one's going to pull second or last. And sometimes it just has to happen as you go if you're not fully planned. But yeah, you just kind of got to you'll figure out a way. You'll see why it does what and when. Degrease. And I'll talk about like the benefits of using candies, the benefits of using semi-transparent, fully opaques, as you get different looks and things like that. All right. So I am going to do something somewhat symmetrical, or at least like top to bottom symmetrical. So let's talk about ways to measure and mark. True rulers, magnetic rulers, they also have these peel and sticks. These are great. No worries, man. These are great because you can like put them down as a guide and you can reposition and you can move them around. But if you're working yourself, you can say, okay, I'm going to stick this here and here. And I know the edge is 8 1/4. So if I want a center, it's going to be 4 and an 1/8 in between. I can just make a mark. And I continue to make those marks. I'm going to use, I don't think you guys can see that very well. So I'm just going to measure from right where inside rolls, right where inside rolls. There's a mark there. So if you're going to find center, you'll find your centers. If I want to find centers between here, if that's not long enough, good old we're 14 inches from edge to edge, so 7. Okay, so if you want to go symmetrical, I always find my center, and then we can just leave this in for a mark. Dan Fontaine, Mr. FBS, how's it going, brother? So this isn't going to stay, but I'm just showing you, you can find your center. You can just, if you really want to be exact. So that's roughly the center of the board. So if I want to do something symmetrical, I can stay in here. I'm going to do symmetrical, but it's going to be an asymmetrical design. I know that doesn't make a lot of sense. But it will, just because it's how I like to do things. I'm just going to cut my edges. On shapes like this, there's a little ripple in there. I'm not going to worry about it too much. I'm going to pull a little tighter. There we go. Alright, so we have our center edge. Let's use, this is going to be fairly rigid. I'm going to use green. Yep, that's what I just used. So those are good to have. So rulers, regular rulers, marking, seamstress tape. There's a million things we can use. Grease pencils, non-grease pencils. What am I marking with? These are Stabilo pencils. Okay, what's nice about Stabilos is they're kind of like a grease pencil, but they don't have grease in them, so you're not going to get a solvent reaction. Okay, so these are water soluble. So before you paint, if you use a water base, you got to wipe off your markings. With solvent, the solvent won't even take it off. So you got to use water based. So a lot of times what I do is I like to start with a border. Let's do, I want to start with a border all the way around. So I'm going to come like just like this, okay? I'm using this as a guide. So I have like a 1/4 inch right as the board rolls over. I'm going to tape this. So I'm just going to take my fingers, I'm going to pinch like this. And I'm going to keep rolling around the board. As the board rolls over, so that's where I'm going to be. I'm going to keep my design inside of there. These skate decks aren't perfectly symmetrical, so I find it's nice to do a border and kind of find an edge that works. Okay, so I'm going all around the edge. A lot of times I'm looking at my light, like where the light's hitting the edge of the board. It can be a really good way to find the bottom line. Now I got a cross hand over hand here, so I might lose you for a second. Or I could just spin the board. That is a nice thing about these VsionAir stands. So I have a nice full border around the edge. Because what I might do is I might cut through that edge and like let artwork go through it, or I might use it as a guide for another line. So this is my border that I'm going to see. So let's do something like we did before. No, we're not doing any stamen. We're going to do some straights and curves. So the first one, I'm not going to measure. I'm going to come here and right before the midway point, actually I'm going to go further out. I'm going to start here, right here, and after I get from here, I'm going to start my turn, and I'm going to cut across like that. And see if I like that. But what I really hate is burying tape underneath this. So I'm going to put just a few tick marks here, here, here that I can see. So I really don't want to bury this under here. So why don't I do this? I want to do it in white. Yeah, you guys can see that. Alright. So I liked that. Now I have to decide, I use that quarter. Do I want 1/4 inch silver? I don't think I do. I want 1/8 inch. I don't use quarter a lot unless it's for like mapping, like measuring. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to come here. I'm a little over 1 inch out. And halfway between here and here, I'm going to start turning. I'm going to come right to, nope, I don't like it. Right here. I'm going to turn and then come straight. So I'm doing a turn and then straight. And I'm going to measure this all the way down and do a few verticals. Alright, so I know if I want to stay symmetrical, I got to keep the same width. So this is a good time to measure out from your edge. And I'm 1.25 inches. Let's see how exact I got. I'm a little off. 1.25 inches. So now I want to stay on this side and do 1.25 inches. And this is the kind of mundane part. But just a little. when you got to go symmetrical, I just lost my marks. One and a quarter. There we go. So I like that turn. It's going to come into play. I'm going to show you why. Because it was kind of setting up for my first panel. So I know 1 1/4 here, 1 1/4 here. I'm going to follow that straight up. And I'm just going to bring it all the way down, and we know that's our width, okay? So as you can see here, this is kind of our first panel. And I'm going to shape that first panel like this. I'm going to cut this already. I'm just going to pull this. Okay. Because now what I'm going to do is, I like the way this turns. I want to do one from here. That's a nice, even measurement. Watch, 3/4 inch. Using my 3/4. Popping down here. And I want to match the same curve, which is about halfway between. And it goes right in. So what I like about these is this side is straight, and I can just go snap, snap, pull the tape right up, and get a nice curve. And this one I can just follow my tape that's there on top. I can snap that one out. That ends up with a really cool panel here and a panel here. And if I want, I can do the same thing. I want to match the same one, but I'm going to come after the spike. I'm going to come right here. Okay? All that same angle. Oh yeah, the old van days. So I'm just doing, you know what? The thing with tape is I want to go the other way. I want to go this way with it. So I want to use this to find that same angle. Maybe I'll go here, like this. Let's see if I like that. After this one is going to go from here. And I'm not sure I like that. But this is what you should be doing here. This is the time to play. You're sketching. Okay? Stop getting in your head that every piece of tape you put down, every line has to be perfect that time. Get it out of your head. It's not gonna be. Like, it's okay, I don't mind it, but I don't love it. I'm gonna pull the tape, I don't love it. Maybe I do this. Use this as a guide. You don't have to commit to everything you put down as being perfect. Play a little. Look, I'm going to bring this down. I'm going to come down like this. I'm going to run this same turn. But I'm running that way this time. Cut. Cut. This one's now coming in and coming under this one. And I have to fix this because it's going to go. It's going to go right through, just so I know. I'm going to go back to my original. So maybe. Oh yeah, I got an idea. See? That's how this works. I want to continue back off this. And I'm going to slice. I'm going to let it happen. Just sometimes you got to let things happen. So I like the way that comes through here. Now it drops over this one. So now this is starting to lead me to something that I'm liking. I like this curve here. The same thing when I come this way and close this off. And I close this stripe right inside it. Then I'm going to take this same one and do something similar and come off this track. Now I'm starting to get panels. So from here, I'm going to bring this back. And these are going to be my main panels. And then I'm going to do panels inside panels. Same angle. Little tip I like to do. When I have to marry two pieces of tape, instead of cutting a line straight across, I cut at an angle because it's easier to kind of merge those two angles together than two straight flat lines. You can actually kind of overlap the points. I'll zoom in a little bit and show you that. So I like this. So if I did another one up here, same angle. I want this width. So I'm going to use this to measure. Alright, I want to hit from here. I'm going to come over here. Mr. Will, what's happening? Okay, so I want to keep that going under. So this graphic's going under this one and back through. Okay. Same thing. A lot of times I would do a weave and have things go over. But not in this case. I want to keep these right where they are. It goes under. And that goes over just like the same. I'm going to cut all these little crosses out. So basically, I'm just making a couple long rectangles and then radiusing them and kind of making a weave. I'm letting the tape and the shape kind of dictate. Let's see if it looks from top down how we look here. Okay, now you see how you start to have these open panels. You start to have these different shapes inside. Alright. And if you look at these shapes, see how I did these? If I wanted more of those, I'm still in the 1/8 inch. I'm still using the 1/8. Sorry. Yeah, I could now come at it with a 1/4. If I want to keep getting tighter, I'm going to try something, see if I like it. I'm going to put the 1/4 down next to it as a gap here. I'm going to go back to my 1/8. I want to see if I like this transition. I don't know. Do we like that? Then I could bring... You know what? I don't not like it, but... Oh, you know what I want to do? Yeah. Hold on. Just got an idea. Go back to... Oh, you know what? I want half. Michael, exactly. Don't give up on the design. Play with it. Enjoy it. Have fun. I started out with, I got something going here I like. Now I can just play with it. So I'm going to go to 1/2 inch. On both sides. Longer curve. I'm going to do this further up. I'm onto something. So, Mr. Barker, we're just playing with tape. Playing with tape. I like this. I want to do I want to do these guys kind of like this in the side, see if I like it. Yeah, I'll do another one this way, but far. That'll do it. Now I'll bring another one up and do a similar thing right here. And I'll balance that to here. But I gotta address this. And then what I start doing here, this will start bringing in 16th inch tape and adding more to the design overall. I gotta balance out this bottom. Alright, so now that all flows through the same. Okay, so if you've been noticing what I've been doing is I started with my outer shapes and then I worked my way in, okay, to see if I liked it. And what I don't like is I don't like this one coming out. I thought those were too busy. Now this one we use and this one we use into this one. So it's kind of trippy. If you were to fill this with paint, it would leak out and come out here and leak back out and come back up to this one. So we're going to have to figure out some transitional colors, but it'll work. Alright, so back to I want my spacing. Remember guys, start with your big shapes and work within them. So just like fire was at loose to tight, with graphics like this, I work from the big stuff to the small areas, okay? So start with the big openings and then work down. Chaotic concept. It's awesome. It's awesome. Tape all for you guys on Facebook. Chaotic over on YouTube. Tape all day to come home and watch Scott tape tonight. I am not right in the head. Maybe it's the heat. Yeah, maybe. But I've stayed pretty symmetrical left and right. I think I'm like a 16th off up here. I'm gonna have to fix that. So now I can take you. Alright, so that's starting to be cool. I kind of... that works. That works. works, that works. The question is, do I want to see about this? Yeah, too much. So that's cool. I'm liking this. Now I don't have too many big openings, so I gotta be kind of careful. But what I do want to do, let's come off here and do like a little side window. Come down here. That way this could be a different color inside here. And maybe drop all the way down. And then I'll do the asymmetrical flip of that. So that stops here, here. What was my gap? Let's see how even I was. Not too bad, a little off. Let's redo that. But I had the idea. I don't miss those shops at all. So I'm going to come down here with a little curve. Going to marry up to that. Go straight down. That's going to be nice and long. And I'm going to... You know what? I'm going to do the same. I'm going to mirror it. I'm going to mirror it and go... This can be the same. Well, I appreciate that. It's the hardest thing for me is doing this live and not going, take this off and just start this over. Take this off and start that over. Because I probably would have a few times by now. Yeah, I don't like that. Here's another little trick you can do. If you want to mimic something. So that's the curve. Take a paper template of that curve. I want to make sure that's right. I can make a paper template and I can move it over here to the right position. Just make sure it's... Yep. Yep. Yeah, prep, yeah. So now I can kind of use that as my guide. And I'll make sure it's straight. With these longs, I probably should have used the orange tape. And there we go. I like that, I like that. And maybe I can do a couple little things inside here. You can even like add like little ones in here if you want. But that's the major layout. So that's where I'm going to keep my major layout. And I think I'm going to keep these. I might lose these, I'm not sure. But this is kind of where I play. And I'm going to get rid of my marks. So I want them to make sure they're gone. And let's move this and kind of get a downward look. There we go. So for me, this is a downward look. This is your left to right. That's a cool design. You know, I think though, this should be closer, or this needs to be moved into the center. See, I like these two angles, but I think this one is just too much that way, so I think it needs to come down. So let's see where I can fix that. So this is how to repair. Okay, I don't like this. It just doesn't look right. I think it needs to be. I think the angle needs to be somewhat more. In this area, like that. You guys agree? Mr. Webb, you are pretty right. Alright, so what I think I'm going to do is this one can come off. Watch, I'm going to pull that. Let's see if this makes it look better. Let's see if I was right. Where's my gap? Ugh. So I don't like using these knives. Okay, so that should have fixed that angle. That does come up to there, doesn't it? That has to come to there. You know, when I marry a piece of tape, I always cut at an angle like that, so it's right here. That way it dies into itself. as opposed to a sharp angle. Okay, so now I need to bring this one. I think I'm going to like that angle a lot better. If you are a really OCD person, this can be a nightmare of a job. Because you'll probably want to kill yourself. But look, you have to think of it rationally. You work within a certain plus or minus a ½ inch, ¼ inch. And just try to work in there and don't be too stressed. There's always a lot of room for adjustment and improvement. The better you get at this, the less of this you do. I'm doing a lot of this for your sake. For the most part, we eyeball a lot of it. I say we, but like just painters in general, a lot of times just eyeball this stuff. But it's a professional eyeballing. It's like a... I don't know if anyone here has ever worked in a kitchen with like a really good chef. You'll work with a really good chef and they'll barely measure anything. But if you were to call him on it and probably put that pinch of whatever that he put in, and it's supposed to be like a teaspoon, bet your ass, it's pretty much a teaspoon exactly. Yeah, so what I'm going to do now, Mike goes, now this is laid out, I'm going to go down to 16th inch tape and start doing extra designs within these and give it a whole nother level. So look, now I can come back. I'm going to use that tape. Actually, I'm going to show you what I do here. So I'm going to marry the two pieces of tape, so watch. I'm going to cut that angle I cut. Same thing. And I'm going to cut the angle over here too. And this is how I like to marry the tape together, and you don't get a bump. There you go. I'm going to go here, go here. I'm going to start turning down now. I think that gap and that gap are pretty close. Yeah, that looks way better. And I'm just going to straighten these up a bit. So if I was starting out, I would get, I'd probably get the blue and the green. I don't use red much. I find it way too soft for most things. So I would get yourself some green or some orange if you do a lot of straights. And definitely the blue. The blue is my good all around. The only reason I'm not using blue tonight, honestly, here, is it doesn't show up as good on camera for you. That's the only reason that I am not using it. I actually prefer the blue over the green. But this does have a lot of straights in it. So the green is probably the best for this. So I'd go green and blue. That would be my recommendation. Alright, yeah, see? I wish I could do a before and after, but that just looks hell of a lot better. Yep. Yep. I like it. Alright, so now I'm going to finalize this with what I normally do. And I am going to use orange for this. So now I'm going to come off here about an 1/8 inch away. I'm going to run the center. Look, I'm going to run the center down all of this. Okay. I'm going to center that. Center that, fix that a little bit. But now, what I'm going to do is this one is going to roll straight through to this, right down the middle. Roll into that. And this tape is a true 16th, which almost, I think FBS is one of the only ones that makes a true 16th. I know 3M never did. I don't think any other brands do the 16th. So now I'm designing what's in the design. So basically whatever color this is going to be, I'm going to spray a color and then pull this, and it'll just have an extra, like, kind of a beauty line in between. Or I can use it for separation. I can decide. So now what I can do, I can come off this one. Same thing. I'm standing halfway in between. I'm eyeballing this, mainly for time. I might go back through, but I'm cutting here and here. So now I'm working with what I've got. A little bump right there I didn't like. Then I want to come off this one. So now that one rolls, so that one rolls, so this one. Now we start getting all this nice weave pattern here. Cut, cut. So what I'd like to actually see from all you guys, definitely comment, share, like, but what color tone should I do this in? I'm thinking blues, but I do blues a lot. What kind of patterns would you like to see me throw inside? We could do, so if I did blues, I could do kind of like the Shishiku stuff, like this. We could do the hexagon stuff, we could do the weaves, we could do some lace. Whatever you guys want to see. Now remember, I talked about some of my crossover stuff. I'm going to finish those up at the end where I heat them. That way nothing moves on me. That's kind of cool. Maybe some here, maybe. I come from here, then we do another. Let's get the stuff right there. So start thinking through colors. We'll start talking about patterns. I think that might be cool. Maybe. Just maybe. Maybe we'll bring in some micro tape and do. I don't know if the micro tape's gonna show up. Fingerprints are cool. I wouldn't do if I was gonna do a fingerprint. I would have probably made see this. I would have made it twice as wide, so there could be a lot more stuff going on in here to zigzag. That's definitely something to go over for another video. Doing a fingerprint design would be cool. It's not actually, it's kind of one of my weaker. I don't really, I've never done one. So maybe it's something I will work on and do. Okay, but now what I'm going to do before I start getting ready to tape it off, anywhere there's a major crossover, okay, see how this moved just a little bit? I'm going to fix that, make sure it doesn't move again. That's where we're going to use the heat. So anywhere there's a cross like that, where I'm worried about it moving, I'm going to tape it down so it's not going to move anyway. But if I just hit it like that, they barely move, just warm. Just hit those crossovers. But I remember I was at SEMA, I was next to, I think it was Kyle Morley from Execution Customs and Ryan from Counts. And they were doing this clicking. I'm like, what the hell are they doing? And then when they explained it, I was like, no shit. Endless lines. I don't want to make an endless video. Oh, so the other thing I can do is these two shapes, I'm going to have them go right through the border. Remember that border I first started? Those are going to completely wrap around and go off the board. And maybe a few others. Yeah, that'll be cool. And maybe this will do the same thing, it'll just go right off the edge. We'll see what I like about that. Do I have any... I looked a little weird there. Okay. So what I could do now. In the side. No, I don't want to run into that line. Yeah, maybe as I paint, I might add some more stuff. I think I'm going to leave it there. I think that's going to be the design. And now, before I call it a night, we're going to back tape this design. I'm going to use the FBS Gold. Actually, you know what? No, that's really expensive and I would never really do that. So at this point, you can use FBS Gold, you could use anything, but the Gold's a bit expensive. I'm going to use regular vinyl transfer tape because it's cheap and it works and it does cut easy. And I'm just going to put it at the edge of one of my designs so I don't even have to cut there. This is the Conform by Art Tape. It works really good. I'm not going to worry about around those bolts too much in that little wrinkle. If I was worried, I'd pull the bolts out. And then, kids, we're going to call it a night. In my case, we're going to call it a weekend. Little wrinkles like that, I don't care. It's not going to show in the final. Roll that over the edge. You just want to use a good transfer tape that you can see through quite a bit, which I can on this. And then, usually what I start doing at this point, this is where I start going, I write notes. I'll do a pattern. So this is just our tape, Conform series, transfer tape. Works great, it's cheap, you can see through it. Paint doesn't attack the glue. And we are good to go. Alright. Not bad for a 2-hour layout. You know, because this is going to be easy, because I can go in. Let's say we're going to make this our first color. I'm going to pop right here like this, go like this. And we'll expose our first window. See, so I pull that one out. I'll cut this one out so we stay consistent. So I like straight blades for this type of work better. Less because you're pulling towards you, it's a little bit better than using an X-Acto. But personal preference is personal preference. I used to use X-Acto, and Rhino used to give me so much crap. Then I got used to doing it this way, and now I don't want to go back. There you go. So first section is there. Hopefully I didn't put myself in a corner, but I might have. But we'll start with a color. We will start with a pattern, and we'll go from there. So go on to McKayFineArt.com. Look at all the patterns we got there, which is right here. Can't find it. So you go to McKayFineArt.com, look at all the different patterns we got between the hexagon and stuff like that. Name a couple patterns you like. Name some colors you like, things like that. And then we'll talk about which patterns to do, what order to paint in depending on colors. Let's see what Jonathan just said here. Let's say you have those painted. Then do you retape over before? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. So say if I'm going to, if I use a blue candy, a light blue, then a dark blue shader candy to make it darker, and let's say the next section is going to be the dark blue candy, well then I don't have to, because the dark blue candy is just going to enhance what's there. But if I was doing, say, yellow and green and then blue out here, yes, I would remask. So the answer is yes and no. It really depends which way the color's going to go. Sometimes, like when I did this here, here's a good example. I did this darker blue insert, then I unmasked this and went right around it again. But when I did this like almost blacker color here, I did cover up the 1/8 inch tape. It just stay on the inside of it so it didn't contaminate. So it just depends on what's next to it and things like that. So we'll talk about that during color, and it'll definitely make a lot more sense. Like when sometimes we'll go dark to light. So when I do this, we did this here, and we never remasked. So what we did is we pulled the darkest color first and painted it, then pulled the next darkest color, the lighter green to the lighter green wash, and then did the lighter green again here, which is this lime, and then took all the tape off and did a quick wash of lime yellow, so even this silver here isn't actually silver. It's actually got a little yellow tint, so we worked our way out of it with color. So there's not one solution. but we'll talk about different ways to do it. So I hope this video helped. I hope it was fun. I definitely want to do more on the fire and the graphics and tape, and you know, those are just kind of rough intros. I'll do some more technical stuff, but I think there should be some good cuts we can get out of this and some good how-tos. I hope you like the layout. Definitely comment, like, share, get people to come on, and maybe I'll do a poll in the next week on my social medias. So go on to social medias and send me a message or post an idea on this, what you like for color, patterns, things like that. We'll see what we come up with next week. Next Thursday, I should be doing next Thursday. If not, I'll make an announcement. So stay tuned. All my members, you'll get announcements from there, and we'll do it on the communication page. And see you all next week. Have an awesome weekend. See ya. Mike, yeah, you can do the black. I don't use the black too much. Or I add the black to the candy. See ya.